My name is Faith. Welcome to Faith Vocals. I'm a Christian who looks through my Christian worldview at the culture around me, culture and current events, and I just use this channel to discuss my perspective, and I hope to hear from you if you'd like to chime in and hear about your perspective. I've mentioned in the past that I come from a very, I call it a thick Christian bubble. Just tend to be surrounded by fellow Christians, and I want to try to avoid the echo chamber effect where you become surrounded by people and things that confirm your own worldview. So you never get to tell whether there's anything that needs to be improved about your belief system. So that's I run this channel both to express my own worldview and also to hopefully learn from others about their worldview and kind of broaden my perspective that way. Hopefully we can broaden one another's perspective. So if you'd like to contribute either in the chat or maybe you come and see this stream later and you find the comments section, you're certainly welcome to use those. I do try to reply to at least the first comment. As in, if you make a comment, I'll try to reply at least until your first one. I won't try to have the last word in the comments. But I do try to respond to everyone who does comment. And right now, well, I'll also let you know another feature that I'm trying to implement into these streams is the chapter headings. So maybe as you're going through the stream, you go, well, I like what she's talking about on this subject. I just don't want to hear a lot about the gameplay. I'd rather hear about the things she says that seem important to her. I'll have those marked in the chapter headings so you can focus on those, or maybe you'd rather skip a lot of what I'm talking about and focus on the gameplay. So I tend to start the chapter headings for gameplay commentary with a GP for gameplay. So you can skip to just those parts if you choose. I think you'll miss a lot because sometimes I comment on the gameplay while I'm talking about the things that are of importance to me. Want to block in that section here. Okay. So, if you're not familiar with the chapter headings, I'm not sure. I feel like it's a fairly recent feature. If you look at the time bar, you may notice that it's all chopped up. It's kind of a dotted red line. So that lets you know that the chapters have been applied, and you may find some text under the time bar if you're on desktop. If you're on mobile, it'll be over the time bar. And you click that text and it'll drop a list for you to find all of the chapters that have been produced that you can skip to. You can click on any of the names in that list and skip to that particular chapter. Let me get back some of these valuable trapdoors here. And it looks like I'm going to need my bundle again. Yeah, that's why I stopped going this way, was because of the lava. I wonder what happens if I start some tunnels on the other side of the chasm. I feel like diamonds, which is what I'm after at the moment, tend to show up in similar areas. I'm trying to rebuild after having lost the... after having died in the... I think it was in the nether. I think it was while I was mining netherrack. For the umpteenth time. And now that I'm near lava, I think I want to make an iron trapdoor. So I'm... Let's see, do I want to go back to my base to use a furnace? I'll probably just take some of this excess cobble, make a furnace that way. And I think furnaces are stackable, right? So I could put this in my bundle when I get done. 54 divided by 8 is going to be 40 times 5, 48 times 6. It would be times 6. And then the remainder, it would be 6, so I can use 2 logs for that. 2 logs. Oh, just 1 log. We'll smelt up 6, and then when those 6 are done, I can apply my my coal to smelt up the rest of the 48 I should have left. But once those 6 are done, well, I can wait until 4, and then I can make my iron trapdoor. I will also want stone. I'll use wood. See how long a wood button lasts around here. There we go. Let's see, I covered the chapters. I had actually started streaming earlier, and had been going for about, I'm just checking one thing here on my YouTube panel, because I did not check my YouTube panel before, and I'd been going for 23 minutes before I realized YouTube was telling me it didn't have any data. So that's not the way we want to proceed. There we go. There's my trapdoor. And this is done. So now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll put that in there for safekeeping for now. And I think I'll start from this corner. It works. So let's just see how long that button lasts. So hopefully you'll be able to see this stream now. And I did want to mention while I was talking about contributing in comments and chat, I certainly do want to communicate with you. I am still getting practice in seeing the messages in chat. I've got a lot of streamers use a two-monitor setup, and so do I. So I've got my monitor on top, which is the full screen monitor, and it's where I see the game. And then I have the monitor at the bottom, which is all the streaming important stuff, including the chat. I try to put my chat close to the top monitor, but when a message comes in, it's just a thin line of text. Oh, I'm leaving you in the dark again. I always do this. Let me get this path all lit up. The chat tends to have just a thin line of text, and your peripheral vision, as I understand it, is wider than it is tall. So because the chat is under my screen, my peripheral vision isn't so good, so I don't tend to catch it really quick. So I need to develop a habit of checking chat more often. I'll be working on that as I continue to stream. So I certainly want to hear from you, but I do hope you'll be patient with me if it takes me a while to respond to any hellos. I also want to call your attention to a playlist I've been putting together. I've got, it's called Great Christian Content. It's the material in that playlist is not by me. I've got 4 there. I can make 4 iron. I can make another pickaxe. The playlist is full of speakers who are better at speaking on the topic of Christianity than I am. And they tend to talk about what kind of evidence there is for Christianity, what the reasons are to consider Christianity true. That's what I'm focusing on as I'm producing this playlist, putting it together, curating the videos. I think I'm well out of diamond region, so I'm going to put a torch there, and then I'm going to go back and branch off from this mine. That's the problem with these long mines. That's why I've been doing the pinwheel mine, because there is so far that you have to go back once you're at the end. And with my method of doing the 1x1 mining, it's more efficient because you see more coal, but you're crawling, so the rate of travel is slower. So still trying to find the most efficient mining method. The reason I'm not doing the pinwheel mine now is after a point it becomes so elaborate, it's hard to keep track of whether I'm putting it together properly. And maybe the solution is not to care so much, but just I thought it was being a bit mentally cumbersome. I was spending a lot of time going around and making sure that I had put it together right. So I took a break from that. But this method is wanting, in my opinion, also. But still experimenting. 1, 2, 3... And this one is going through diorite, so at least it's a thin line. Thin vein of a diorite. And there's a cave. Have I been in that cave? I think it would be lit up if I had been. I'm gonna explore. That looks like some... Ah! Skelly, skelly, skelly! I'm trying to ambush it. It's trying to ambush me. There it is. There you go. I got the first strike. Oh, there's 2 of them. At least I've got bone meal now. And while I was off stream, I did collect some resources. As I mentioned, I'm trying to build back after having died in the previous stream. Let's see, what would be a good pile for me to pick up next? I'll take that. I got myself a bundle in the while I was off stream, and I built myself a composter because I realized to make dandelions, we've got a mine shaft. Ooh. In order to make dandelions, I'm going to need a lot of bone meal, and I understand with a composter you can turn, is it organic products, or I'm going to have to figure out how these composters work. I'm also going to have to go back for that iron. I think I've got enough iron smelting, so I won't focus on collecting more iron now. Whoop. I'm probably going to need to go back to base soon anyway and reorganize my inventory. Okay, so no more skellies should surprise me. And then I'll just go this way. I don't know where that came from. I think I'll just avoid... Okay, we got a friend up there. Okay. Those guys are so destructive, they're self-destructive. I was talking about the playlist, the Great Christian Content playlist. So I've been looking for videos that do a good job of explaining the reasons to believe that Christianity is true. So that is optional, of course. You can take it or leave it as you like, but I'd encourage you to check it out if you're willing. I think there's good material to be found there. I can take that, yep. And I'm going back to base. So that's in my playlist section. It should be the only other playlist you see there besides the playlist for my previous streams. This corner makes me nervous. Much better. And I left my furnace over there. And it's done. It's all done. Good. Oh. Why did I pick up the iron? That's not what I intended. Okay, so I'm going to have to empty this, and this is the worst place to empty the bag, but there we go. Let's see, I don't want the andesite just now. I can take that. That's all right. Okay, all organized. I'm going to leave the furnace there for now. I think I do want to make another... Let's smelt some actual stone, because... Oh, the button survived. Let's just leave that there as an experiment. And I'll smelt a stone button. And make a trapdoor. Okay. In my last stream, I had started talking about how originally with Minecraft, well, not originally, but at some point while playing Minecraft, in my experience with Minecraft, I've considered whether or not I wanted to actually quit the game, and not because I found it boring or anything like that, but for religious reasons, because Minecraft, you know, one of the major enemies in Minecraft is the zombie. And of course we've also fought some skellies, so undead characters primarily. And as a Christian, I want to try to be focusing on things that God is pleased with, that line up with his values. And a central part of our Christianity, a central part of Christian belief, is that Jesus rose from the dead and came to save us from our sins. So that doesn't change whether or not there are undead critters, but the idea of undead beings does kind of taint the feel of resurrection a bit. I'm not sure how best to explain what I'm thinking through here, but if you lose a loved one and they are legitimately raised from the dead, God, it's a miracle, it's an act of God, they are given back to you, that's something to celebrate. And I think part of why the undead monsters are so interesting is because it turns that joy of getting back the person that you love and have been missing, it turns that into something bad. And it's an interesting concept. What if the person you love and miss did come back to you, but in a way that you didn't want? So I can acknowledge that that's kind of an interesting concept to think about, but also it does sadden the what I think is a good thing, which is that God has in the Bible raised people from the dead, and there was no taint to that. There was no question about whether or not that was a good thing. And Jesus' resurrection certainly was a good thing. But the existence of the concept of zombies, which of course don't exist in the real world, they're purely theoretical. The existence of this concept does then produce an alternative narrative to Jesus' resurrection. Okay, so people are more familiar with the concept of zombies now than of a God-granted miraculous resurrection. So was Jesus a zombie? And of course not, because zombies, we understand, are not truly alive. And those that Jesus has brought to life, and Jesus himself coming back to life, are truly alive. And us Christians expect that if God calls us to pass away like normal people do, if he doesn't call us to be raptured, which is a concept from Christianity where we believe Jesus will come back to claim the world as his own, and as part of that, Christians will be taken out of the world, so we don't have to be here for God's judgment on the world. In either case, we expect to be fully resurrected and or fully alive, and fully alive here in when we do reach heaven, whether we die and have to be resurrected, or whether we're raptured, whether we're taken straight there when Jesus returns. So the issue of zombies in culture and in games is it's not consistent with the Christian worldview. And okay, should I be spending my time with games that do not fully reflect my worldview? And this is what I've been grappling with all through the stream. If you've been following the stream for a while, you've heard me on this old hat for quite a while now, where I'm sorting out the idea that our entertainment is mixed. There's good in our entertainment, there's bad in our entertainment, and there's good and bad in the same entertainment. You can't easily divide it. And how do we get the good and have as little of the bad as possible? And do you just reject all entertainment? Well, I think entertainment is a God-given thing. I think we are drawn to entertainment because it reflects the way that God created us to be. When God put the first man and the first woman in the Garden of Eden, all they really had to do in the garden was be entertained. I know the Bible says that they were placed there to work the garden, but with no weeds to weed, no pests to worry about, no disasters to wreck the crops. Everything was arranged to work ideally according to the system that God had produced. My impression is that their work in the garden, quote unquote work in the garden, would have been more like play. They would have put their effort into something that was going to be successful. It had no worries. It didn't really have any obligations. Just put the seed in the ground and forget about it. It'll grow. It'll be properly watered by the mists in the garden, since rain had not been brought into our environment yet. And that wasn't a concept until Noah's flood. That was a special supernatural change in the environment that we live with now as a normal effect in our environment from now on. So let's see, I tangented again. This is what I do. I'll try to minimize it in the future, but for now, this is what I do. So, Adam and Eve in the garden, they didn't really have to do anything in order to accomplish the work that God had given them to do. So they could just spend their time being entertained with learning how the plants grew, and maybe making experiments to see if they could get them to grow differently or better if they chose to. It's all speculation, but God put them in the ideal environment to essentially play and to be entertained, to be engaged with whatever was there to take their attention, to claim their attention. And I think that's the best kind of entertainment. We have, it feels like we have a couple types of entertainment. There's a kind of dead entertainment where if you've been playing a game for too long or watching TV for too long or something, maybe you're familiar with this kind of entertainment where it's not that you're engaged, it's just that your brain is turned off. So you're not benefiting from what's in front of you, but you're not in the mood to seek better. And I think this entertainment kind of comes from a place of wanting to be served ourselves, where we're expecting someone to offer something that stimulates or amuses us, and so we are not engaged. We're passive recipients. But there's another type of engagement where when you see someone doing something tremendous, it's thrilling, then you do get engaged. Oh wow, look at that acrobat, look at what they're able to accomplish, or look at that painter and everything that they've learned and put together on the canvas. And in that sense, entertainment is not self-worship. It's not expecting others to feed us. It's not a dead entertainment. It's an engaged entertainment, and we're both benefiting from and at the same time benefiting others. The person who is willing to put themselves into entertaining us, we are appreciating what they have done for us, and it keeps us engaged. It keeps us, I think it's a better feeling being entertained in that way than simply amused. The idea behind the word amuse is to turn off your mind, essentially. That's what happens with a lot of modern entertainment, especially TV, especially I feel this way when I've played games for too long. My brain just shuts off, and I'm no longer fully involved in what I'm doing and what's going on around me. And by the way, I do apologize if my long periods of defragging, that's what I call inventory management, are boring. Please do let me know in the comments if this is something you would like me to do less or find a way to be more efficient at. I find that it's easy for me to be able to talk about in-depth subjects. Let's see, I did put my bones there, so that's good. I think I've got only what I want now. Okay. I don't have cobblestone. I will be mining. I'll just leave the cobblestone. Did I leave behind any iron trapdoors? I don't think I left any trapdoors. Do I want more blocks of iron for trapdoors? Sure, why not? Nope. Nope. I don't want to die with this on me. I'll just go with this. And then I'm getting hungry. See, once I get into gameplay, then I start focusing on what I'm doing in the game, and it's harder for me to keep track of my thoughts. But I also want to balance my conversation, my talking, with what keeps you engaged. So I want to be both informative and entertaining. So let me know how I can make the stream better, either in the chat or in the comments if you come and see this as a VOD later, a video on demand. Okay, so now I'm heading back down here, and I want to go to the chasm, because I was making tunnels in the chasm, and I had found that mine shaft. So maybe I'll check that area out now. Maybe I want to make a shield before I get fully there. Okay, came out too early here. I'll just make do. So I was talking about entertainment, as I often wander off to. And about how God has given us entertainment. I think it's the expression of the way that He has designed us to be. He designed us to be in that engaged form of entertainment. And I think in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve probably spent a long time looking at the plants and the flowers. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing to me how God has given us these flowers and fruits that are so unique. You look at an apple and you say, okay, this is what a fruit is. And then you look at a banana and, well, that's a very different kind of fruit. So that's interesting. Maybe there's some similarities between bananas and apples. I heard about a parrot who had learned to talk. This parrot had a trainer who was a scientist and who was working with this parrot on linguistics. So this bird had some dedicated training. And this area is going to be filled with places for monsters to show up, but I'm not going to worry about that right now, I think. I do want to arm the shield. And there's another layer down here. Okay. Anyway, this parrot, I think the scientist had introduced it to a cherry. And the parrot didn't have a word for cherries yet. It had tasted bits of banana before, and it had tasted bits of apple before. And it began asking for banapples. And the scientist was trying to figure out what banapples meant. And the best she could figure out was that maybe the bird thought that the cherry tasted a bit like banana, and it certainly resembles an apple in its external shape. So maybe the parrot was combining the two words into its own word for a cherry. But nevertheless, all of these fruits, they have some similarities, and yet they're different in such ways. And then you run into a pomegranate, which is, it kind of looks like maybe an apple or a fig from outside, and then you open it up and it's broken into these, like the seeds are encased in what look like rubies, basically. The flesh of the fruit is around each seed, and to me it's just amazing the diversity that God put into these fruits for us. And then we have, and I do realize that fruits have been cultivated by man over time. I have no idea what a wild pomegranate looks like. I do recognize that bananas are not quite the way we expect them to be in the wild. They're definitely far more palatable cultivated than they are wild. So, but even so, we've got this base that is able to develop in such varied ways. Adam and Eve would have been able to see the creatures in the garden as God originally created them, and now we've got such variety in dog breeds. And I do kind of wonder, okay, where would plants and animals be nowadays if Adam and Eve hadn't been... He came out so fast I didn't know how to respond to him. Okay. And there's more of those little guys around here. Yep. I get to surprise you. How many of you are there? It's like a little gang of little zombies. Okay. I'm gonna put some food near at hand. And this guy has the advantage. That granite's keeping me from getting down there. Okay, there we go. They must have tiny hitboxes or something. They're so hard to hit even when I'm thinking my sword is on top of them. There's the diamond I'm looking for. Okay. And I've been thinking about flowers too, how we have a certain design for flowers that is standard. And I don't know about you, I tend to think about the daisy style of flowers kind of being the standard design. But then it changes. Now we have roses that deviate from that design a bit, and we have carnations that are somewhere between roses, and I don't know if you can quite put them between roses and daisies, but they're definitely different. Obviously also affected by human influence. You've got irises and orchids. Those are my favorite flowers because they are just so different from what tends to come standard, at least in my culture. So Adam and Eve definitely had an ideal position to spend their lives saying, look at the amazing things that God has created and allowed us to partake in. And I think that would have been a very engaging, entertaining kind of existence for them. So, I don't believe the right answer to this mixed entertainment problem that I've been grappling with is just to shun all entertainment. I think it's here because God gave it to us, because it's good for us. We do misuse it. We can opt for the dull, self-serving entertainment instead of the entertainment that glorifies God, and those with skill who are using that skill in a way that glorifies Him. But where we find entertainment that deviates from God's standard. I don't think the if we find that all entertainment on Earth tends to have a little mix of the bad, then I don't think the idea is to shun all entertainment. I think we should be trying to pick entertainment that is as little distracting from God's glory as possible. That's what I was getting into in my my previous stream. I think the one I did last time. And in Minecraft, I would say that the zombies, the skeletons, are a potential distraction from God's glory. They're not entities that He has allowed into our world. They're not a part of His creation, and they take something away from the good that He offers. Like I said, and to be honest, because I am starting this stream a second time, having it looks like I've corrected the technical difficulties that didn't allow the first stream to work. But since I'm starting the stream a second time, it's a little bit hard to tell if I've spoken on this during this run of the stream or in the 23 minutes before that weren't really covered. Okay, who's there? Right next to me. Wow. If it were a snake. Okay. Yep, checking my audio here. It says I'm in the red, so I definitely I wonder if I peaked my audio at that point. Anyway, in one of these streams, I'll recap it again just to make sure it's in this stream. I mentioned that zombies are a distraction from the goodness of the concept of the resurrection. How Jesus rose from the dead so that He could raise us from the dead. Not so that He could have done that anyway, but it proves that He is qualified to take our sins and offer us a place in God's family and raise us from the dead. Because we are no longer due the punishment for the sins, since He has taken that upon Himself. And I would suggest that zombies on their face are kind of a distraction from that goodness of the concept of the resurrection. Now, I do think concepts like the undead are can be beneficial in that they allow us to question what we take for granted. I think that is why originally God allowed sin into the world anyway. God is not at fault for sin because humans have always had the freedom to choose whether or not we would sin. But given the option to deny us free will so that we would never sin and the world would always be morally perfect, and the option to let us have free will, which means that some of us would freely choose, in fact all of us would freely choose to turn away from God, to rebel, to sin, and then it would be a matter of choice whether we were going to accept His plan of salvation. God chose to give us free will and not have a pristine moral world. Why was that? And I think one of the benefits to the world that God chose, where we have free will and have chosen to rebel against Him, is that now we have these, what we would have taken for granted is no longer for granted. If we had lived in the Garden of Eden, we would have been... Okay, I was going this way. I'll just go ahead and keep digging out my mind and see what I find in the diamonds department here. Had God allowed us a perfect world, then, well, we were allowed a perfect world. Had God not allowed us to choose against a perfect world, we would have been in the Garden of Eden. We would have had a good relationship with God, but we would never have known it would be any other way. We would never have discovered that God is just or that God is merciful, because there would be no sin for God to respond to justly. And there would be no sin for God to forgive in mercy. And so I think that's why God, one of the reasons why God has allowed us free will. It does allow us to get to know Him in a different way than we ever would have. Okay, so this comes out here, and I don't feel like blocking off a little roof from my mine all the way across here, so I think I'll just dig out a trail and set up a new trapdoor here. I do have trapdoors, good. And in the same way, concepts like the undead, that sort of thing, that ends that plan. Do allow us to ask why is the Bible's representation of resurrection better? And I think we do realize that okay, and I've got no, I do have a water bucket. Okay. So maybe I don't want to make trails in that direction for now. Thankfully, I had a lot of health stored up. So maybe I want to head in this direction. And I think what I'll do, since there's a good long wall heading in that direction, I'll just make 4 in this direction. And then I'll make paths down this way. Let's see, so I had talked about how I think the concept of zombies asks us, why would it be good to have our loved ones back after death? And I think there's a good answer to that. If we're getting our loved ones back after death, and I believe that biblically speaking we are, if we are saved, if our loved ones are saved, and saved is a Christian jargon word, I think, but basically means that we have accepted Jesus Christ's payment for our sins. We are saved from the judgment for our sins. So if both we and our loved ones are in that state, then we will be reunited with them in heaven. Why would that necessarily be a good thing? Well, I would suggest that any alternative to God's form of resurrection would not be a good thing. Thankfully, Jesus has the plan that Jesus and God both created, and of course that's redundant. Jesus is God. I'm talking of Jesus and God the Father, and Jesus is also known as God the Son. They're both the same God, 2 different persons within the same entity. And I've gotten into how difficult that concept is to grok for me personally. But the plan that they have created for us, for restoring those who have passed away is the correct one. And we have an alternative. These zombies who are in their first iteration, they were the products of magic. And voodoo sorcerer, certainly a method, I guess I would say, sorcery that God has forbidden in the Bible. And we see that, at least in concept, that does not seem to be ideal. Now, I think there are stories that could be told. What if you could have your loved one back exactly as they ought to be? That's why I like fiction. Is it gives us the opportunity to ask these questions, and if the fiction is well written, if the author does their due diligence and puts the pieces together realistically, of course you can have a fantasy, but have the rules of your fantasy world be consistent. Then we have the opportunity to see why things might necessarily be the way they are. I've got plenty of iron, so I'm not going to collect any more iron. Just taking a look to see if there's any exposed diamond around here. Okay, and that's enough for a stack of torches. I might want to get more coal. Fiction is a good playground for logical concepts. It's kind of a way that we translate abstracts into something concrete and easier to grasp, and that's why we can derive moral value from stories that have little to do with the real world. Because I think because fiction allows us to see what must be necessarily and what must not be necessarily, even if it works in a world that is not necessarily our world, then it'll work anywhere. And of course there are a lot of possibilities and iterations to explore, which is why there are so many works of fiction and why we haven't exhausted the possibilities there. Okay, I'm not seeing much in the way of diamond around here. Been there. Should have known there were torches. There's lots of ores in this area. And no diamonds. Hey, it worked! I've heard that if you have water 2 blocks high, then you can get into these holes. So, I do have my bucket. I wonder if I could just enter the tunnels without it. But then I guess I'd wash out all the torches that I put into these tunnels. I'm a little hungry. I'm gonna eat this. So anyway, I was talking about, I think this part I was talking about in the 23 minutes before I realized the stream was not working. I think I was talking about how, let's see, how have I got this arranged? Okay. I'm not finding much diamond in this area, so I'm going to start making tunnels in this direction. I think it was in the previous stream I was talking about, was it Fortnite? That kind of picked up the zombie concept after Minecraft made it popular, and I think Call of Duty's even gotten a zombie mode. And I don't play Call of Duty, so I'm not fully informed on that. There's some sort of army shooter type game that's gotten a mode like that. Said I wouldn't collect iron, but I can't help it. So I think zombies have become this concept that's just kind of cool. If you want your game to be cool, put zombies in it. That'll make your game cool. And so looking at Minecraft, we've got zombies, we've got archer skeletons. Okay, I assume that maybe those are in the game to be cool. They're not in the game as spiritual elements. So, okay, maybe I can overlook that. Maybe it's a distraction from God's values, but maybe it's not a big distraction. There are certainly worse things in games. But then as I've watched other updates come into Minecraft, we've had witches introduced in Minecraft. Okay, that's kind of heading in a spiritual direction. We've got sorcerers in Minecraft with the evokers, and they even use little spirits, the Vex, when they're fighting you. That doesn't seem... that just seems to be heading even further in what I consider the wrong direction. And, okay, so is all this in the game because it's cool? Or is all this in the game because it's... because there's an agenda? And I don't think it's possible to say. So I'm not going to claim that there is a spiritual agenda behind these things. I'm assuming that these are elements in the game because they are cool. I'm just checking to see. Yep, I'm beside that trail. Waiting to see how far along I had gone on the trail. Along the trail. So I'm currently playing Minecraft, but just keeping an eye on the way things are developing. I'm gonna take a drink here. I feel like my throat's been doing pretty good today. I'm only just recently noticing any trouble with it. I talk about how my voice tends to wear out pretty quick. I think one of the things that may be helping me today is I tried to avoid cold drinks. I've heard that can set you off on the wrong foot if you're going to be speaking for a long time. So I'm exploring with that. I wanted to get into my approach to magic in fiction, because the unique thing about magic, one, God does tell his people to avoid sorcery, and to me that seems like it encompasses any and all forms of magic. It's not like God's saying avoid a specific thing. And yet we have Christian authors who have written books that include magic. For instance, C.S. Lewis is a very famous author for his Chronicles in Narnia series. And you have a white witch in the first book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. She's a title character. And there she is making an appeal in the story to... it eventually takes the life of Aslan, who's supposed to be a representation of Jesus in the story. Tell you what, I'm tempted to switch to using my diamond pickaxe. Maybe I'll explore this area first. No diamonds that I can see over there. I'll just stick to this level and see if anything appears. No. And I'll keep going. Did I come out through the water source? That's interesting. So I'll do this, and I should be able to swim in. Yep. I came out directly through the water source here. I'll just block that up. I'll just leave it. Not worth it. So the in the Chronicle of Narnia, to summarize briefly, the White Witch is able to demand the life of the character whose name is Aslan. They're able to make a deal. She was going to demand the life of one of the children who enters the world because he'd broken a law known as the deep magic. If I'm not getting my details horribly wrong, so she's making an appeal based on this magic, and Aslan, who I believe represents Jesus, C.S. Lewis being a Christian author, was wanting to write I think an allegory about Jesus. Aslan gives up his life in return for the boy Edmund's life. And it's on the basis of this deep magic. The world will be destroyed unless the deep magic is appeased. But there's an even deeper magic, and that is why Aslan is able to come back from the dead in this story. So here's a Christian who is using magic as a representation of God's law and the penalty for sin, which Jesus paid for us, and Jesus' resurrection. So what do I do with that? There's this great Christian who is also an apologist, by the way, and if you haven't heard my other streams talking about apologetics, apologetics is not making an apology in the sense of saying you're sorry for something. Apologetics is, it comes from a Greek word, apologia, which means to have a defense for yourself, to have reasons for what you believe and are done. So technically, when we're making an apology, when we're saying I'm sorry, the idea came from us defending ourselves. Nowadays, we just say, "Oh, I'm sorry," to get someone off our back, and we don't assess our reasons so much for why we are guilty in their esteem. Okay, so I'm not coming up with anything this way. It feels like I need to be back alongside the chasm here. Kind of work off the wall of the chasm, which I don't really care for. Let's see, how far have I gone in this direction? Pretty far. So I think I'll make a tunnel out to the chasm so that I can see where this lava pool connects. So C.S. Lewis not only was a Christian writer, but he also looked into the reasons for believing Christianity was true. In fact, before he was a Christian, he was an atheist, and from what I understand, he struggled a lot with why he should become a Christian. And eventually he became convinced that Christianity was true. Okay, so it looks like that lava comes out and connects with here. So I don't want to make any tunnels in that direction. Yeah, I just don't like the idea of tunneling along this cave. It looks like maybe from this point on it would be safe. So I'll see if I can bridge my way across. And yet here's this Christian apologist who is using magic, which the Bible says to avoid, in order to make his point. So what do I do with that? Is C.S. Lewis just completely wrong for the approach he used? Or is there some other way to look at this? And I don't think I'm smarter than C.S. Lewis. He was an Oxford professor. So that doesn't necessarily make him right, but I don't want to just write him off either. I'm just trying to make a good spot for a furnace, because I'm going to need some iron for more trapdoors. And I've got plenty of iron in my inventory. So I'm digging a room and collecting unnecessary iron while I'm at it. There we go. And I saw another work of Christian fantasy by a lady named Jill Williamson. I want to say it's the Blood of Kings Trilogy. I couldn't remember the name before when I was bringing this up in the stream that never was, the stream that I don't think made it to public. Yeah, I could just chuck these coal in here, and I really do need to come up with some more coal. What I can do, here, because 64 and 33, close enough. It's not 100, but it's close enough. So we're just going to put this in here for safekeeping. We're going to get this. We're going to put that in there, and now we'll start roasting this stuff. Actually, I think I want to start with that. I'll just keep adding more as I need to. Nah, that's too much babysitting. I'll figure something out. So Jill Williamson had this Christian fantasy book series. It's a trilogy called the Blood of Kings Trilogy. And in this trilogy, certain people have the ability to read the minds of others. And they're not the bad guys, they're the good guys. This is just an ability that some people have. Now, I think most people would call it magic, because it's an ability that we humans don't commonly have. In her novels, there's another group who also practices magic. They are clearly the bad guys. Their magic is clearly the equivalent of sorcery in the story. And she's made a divide between these two forms of what we might construe to be magic. So that was interesting to me. That got me thinking. So what makes a particular ability magic? Magic is basically the having a power that we do not find to be normal, right? But some people have more ability in certain things than other people. Is it magic if someone is a better artist than I am? Or is it magic if a fish can breathe underwater and I can't? So that's where good fiction gets our head scratching a bit. And I think it's good to ask those kinds of questions. Clearly there are abilities that are not common to human beings that are not also magic. Those are abilities or powers that God has granted to the creatures who possess them. Okay, I'm feeling like if I I'm not careful while placing this trapdoor, I could back into the water. I mean the lava here. There we go. So if something seems to be a natural ability in a work of fiction or a game or something like that, I'm not calling that magic in my opinion. There was the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, and I've seen some of that. I haven't seen all of it. But you have these tribes where certain people out of the tribes, not everybody, but certain people have the ability to bend water or fire or air or earth. And so, for an example, that does not strike me as magic strictly. I would suggest, okay, some people have abilities that can be honed with practice. Now you can ask, well, what about the energy involved? I think, especially with fire magic, there's an energy that comes from the body that's used for that, and it does line up with Eastern practices. Perhaps you could say, well, in the real world that would be magic. And that's where I am very interested in hearing from people who have different philosophies on this. I come from a Christian background. We have very little basis with magic. So I'm not going to pick up lapis because my inventory is full enough already. I would be very interested in what somebody from a different worldview or background would define as magic, how they'd delineate magic. So that's one way I'd look at it. What about real magic? What counts as real magic? Well, in the real world, God says, avoid sorcery. If ability is only what God provides, if all the power we have comes from God, which I believe it does, you can't get power except that which God has put into the world, because he is the only creator of the world. Then why does God say no sorcery? Why does God say there are certain abilities or powers that we are not to pursue? And I'd suggest the reason for that is pursuing those abilities or powers requires pursuing them apart from God. It requires buying into a lie that they can be had without God's provision. And I think that's a lie that Satan, God's adversary, would very much want people to believe. It's it's the bill of goods he sold Eve at the very first, when he was saying God only says not to eat this forbidden fruit because he knows that once you eat it, you'll be like him. Well, he was saying that Eve could have a power that God had not granted her. And she bought that, and she ate the forbidden fruit as it's described in Scripture. And now we've got the world as we know it. So really, any time that we sin, we are essentially practicing sorcery. We're seeking something that God does not provide by disobeying the commands that he has given us. So if Satan is going to perpetuate the myth of magic in our real world, how does he go about that? Well, he and his demons, the fallen angels that rebelled against God and now follow Satan and are going to be due judgment from God at the end of the world. They apply the power that God has given them, the ability that God has given them, and they're using God's power, but they're using it against him. And God allows this because they're basically making rope to hang themselves with. They can't overpower God. They got all their power from him anyway. There's no way to overpower him. But Satan presents this lie that magic can be had apart from magic, that power can be had apart from God's provision. And that is what magic essentially is in my understanding. So where I see a story where it's not the person themselves who has the ability, where a person is able to apply magic because they're enabled to by some spirit, some familiar, something like that. They've got a little friend who is enabling them to do these magical things. That's where my hackles start to raise. Because then it's not a natural ability that arguably... Oh, I did break up some lapis. Oh, well. I can pick up this dirt here. Okay. But I won't try to gather any more of that for now. So when someone has spiritual help or the help of a familiar, which is technically a spiritually enabled being, I would suggest, then that's where I start to be cautious. But there is a third type of magic that you tend to see in stories, and that type of magic is where you've got a scholar who has come across a book, or maybe there's some lore that's been passed down over the ages, and you just can't tell. You just can't tell whether it's a natural ability or where they're getting the source of their magic from. I think it's interesting in the first Frozen movie. I haven't seen Frozen 2, so maybe Frozen 2 elaborates on this. But in the first Frozen movie, Elsa, she's the one who's able to use ice powers. Her parents take her to the trolls to see if the trolls can help them sort out why she's got these powers and if they can be removed, and if Anna, who's been injured by them, is going to be all right. And the first question that the troll they're consulting asks is, was she born with it or cursed? So I think that's interesting, because that would be the first kind of question I would ask based on my personally made up standard is, what is the source of this magic? Have I used up all of my iron? It looks... No. Yeah, I've got some iron in here. Yeah, my first question would be, what is the... That's interesting. They've got the first block in this design highlighted, so I can't really see that gold very well. I wonder if there's a functional reason for that, to say maybe that that's going to be the block that gets picked up when that gets dropped when I right click. Anyway, according to my personal made-up standard, that would be the question I'm asking first too, is, okay, is this a natural ability that this girl has? Or is it some sort of spiritually enabled phenomenon? Okay, so there's the button, and this will be the trail back to base. I think I'll get myself organized again. I guess I can leave this, because it'll just keep cooking. So, okay. So that's what I look at in stories. And just to be clear, there are good fantasy stories that might have characters who are assisted by other beings. I'm thinking of, there's a series called The Way of Kings. I read the first 2 books of this series. It's written by a Mormon. Brandon Sanderson, you may, if you're familiar with fantasy, you may have heard his name. He's definitely famous in the field. But he, let's see, where was I coming from with this? Way of Kings. Anyway, there's a magical system in Way of Kings where the entities that allow this magic to happen are definitely, I think spirits, nice, would be accurate for them. I think they're called Spren. They're called Spren in the book, so it's not necessarily using the word spirit. Okay, I'm just going to unload everything and pick it back up again. There we go. And then I need to lay down another trapdoor, which I don't think I have on me at the moment. So that would be a case where I would be cautious. That's the kind of magic that I would be concerned about. But I'm thinking Brandon Sanderson is just... I think he was the one who coined the... no, maybe he didn't coin the rule of awesome, but he definitely follows it, where if something seems like it's going to be cool in the story, then that's the direction he goes with his stories. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just the way that I parse magic, the way I approach it, and try to do so in line with my Christian beliefs and convictions. That's what I'm explaining here. Okay, so this is back at base. Okay, so my throat is getting pretty worn out. This has been a low-key grinding stream. I've got plenty of iron. Let me condense some of this. Let's see. The crafting table is over here. I'm thinking I'm going to wrap it up here. I've played, I've said something. I'll try to get back on the ball about chaptering these videos. I haven't quite made it through the last one yet. Normally I would be able to. My schedule has gone through some negative circumstances lately. Negative for the channel. I think one of them is going to be positive for me personally, but I'm going through some adjustments, so I can't promise when the videos will be chapterized, but hopefully I'll have that time-saving feature for you before too long. Okay. I think I'll just leave this as is. Just trying to think through what I'm going to need. Excuse me. Probably what I want to work on is getting a little more obsidian. That shouldn't be too hard. There's plenty around here. In fact, whoop! Spilled my water. Just a moment. No real harm done, but certainly a mild distraction. I'm trying to get back to thought. Yeah, I was going to go ahead and pick up some iron. And I've got sugarcane for books, so I should be able to make an enchantment table. Here I have been talking about magic, and let's make an enchantment table. I'm going to need leather, but I've got cows outside. I probably don't need that much paper. It's fine. I think that's what I'll focus on next time, because I am getting worn out. I've been going at this for 23 minutes longer than it may appear to you. But next time, maybe I'll work at getting some armor enchanted with fireproofing or something. And then I'll be able to maybe, hopefully, brave the nether more successfully. So, God bless, and play kind.